My name is Kycell, and I have finally been able to return to my work on the Forgotten Minotaur King. Chapter 7. Given the nature of the scholastic work I have chosen to perform, this last passage of time may be lost in transcription. It has been several months since I have had the ability to dictate my activities to Ahani Rau. But my Rospo superiors have finally issued back her notation devices and allowed us the free time from our intensive labor to return to documentation. For the past few months, Ahani, Tristafe Myrink, the young elf whose name I learned was Dar, and myself have been prospecting in the Schneef caves beneath a long-abandoned village of Fiolatov. I call it a village, however the ruins resemble large hovels and cottages overladen with rust-covered factoral structures and little sign of any previous organic life at all. The journey to the mine went rather smoothly. The accommodations were far more elegant than our first coach on the journey, and slightly less stress-inducing than our ride with the treacherous arachnid Gemin Gast. I asked a Rospo frogman guard escorting us through the town and surrounding partially mechanized forest what he knew of the area as we drew closer to the Schneef mines.
Why, this old junk heap used to be an abandoned Panzerschnatt. You know, those little freak droid wars or whatever's turned already built towns into mobile tank cities. The boss had them run off mid-operation, because this joint was a good investment in Schneef mining. Hey, that's the mines you and your pals are going to be working in, right?
I then asked about its geographical relation to Guldenarad, former seat of the Mindus royal family, and temporary ruling ground of the Minotaur king, Krunturg, my end goal. While we were captured and in the presence of the head Rospo himself on Tasma Mudpit, he had promised we would be working in close proximity to that location.
Yeah, we're just a bit east of that old place. Real nowhere kingdom, that one. Anyways, history and geography lesson are over. Meet the new crew, will yas?
A number of humanoid races in tattered jumpers and severely dented hard hats milled in and out of a large cavern that was eerily lit and emitting sounds of a bustling quarry. As the four of us left the cart that day, we were issued our work clothes, and despite Montasma's previous allowance, our weapons, gear, and research implements were once again taken from us as we were given our brief explanation for what our lives would be for the foreseeable future. For those not in the know, and fortunate enough not to have any relatives lost to addiction, Schneef is one of the most prolific illicit substances on the planet of Indignia. While the substance isn't entirely understood scientifically, its use has been prevalent for decades now. It can be harnessed in almost any feasible way and result in a variety of effects, depending on how it is ingested. What we were forced to mine was a brightly hued crystallized form found in caves and dungeons. This form was commonly powdered and mixed with other ingredients to be inhaled for an energy-boosting effect. Alternatively, the powder could be used to soil plants, which, when fully matured, could be burned, resulting in a relaxing effect once inhaled. Some nature-worshipping spellcasters claim this has a powerful effect on their abilities and implement its use in their teachings quite often, despite other practitioners denying this claim and stating the addictive nature of smoked Schneef is far more harmful than beneficial. The final and most commonly used state of Schneef would be when it is alchemized into a beverage and ingested in small, or more likely mass, quantities. This form initially has effects not outwardly dissimilar to alcohol, however far more potent and with mildly hallucinogenic properties. It would also eventually lead to far more reckless and dangerous behavior on the part of the user. This state of Schneef also has the most powerfully addictive effects, resulting in it being criminalized quite harshly in most realms and kingdoms. While contributing to the development and dispersion of such a loathsome substance was never a goal of mine, this short stint of labor is aiding me in completing my goals. So, in my heart, I can only hope the ends will justify the means. The conditions of our housing was quite poor while we were working in the mines. We would sleep in tent houses of 15 to 20 workers each for approximately 5-hour shifts before returning to work. Tristeve took to the physical work surprisingly well for a mildly diminutive mouseling. She would often tell me or Hani, in what I hoped was a joking tone,
"You know, every day we're still in this camp, your university better double what you're supposed to be paying me."
Ahani, on the other hand, was a scholar such as myself. However, the Rospo and other workers would give her a hard time, due to them commonly mistaking her for a large dwarf, and not the half-dwarf that she was. When she or myself would explain the difference, they would commonly ask why a mule like herself wouldn't be twice as good at mining. I believe she may have had the toughest time there of all of us. Finally, the short elf named Dar, who was the only stranger to me and my group, was the most stoic and downtrodden of our party. We were unable to get any words out of the young man, beyond when he pointed to himself and said, "I am Dar." We were unable to get any information from him about his 2 traveling companions who had lost their lives before and during our abduction. He would just spend most of his days and nights in contemplative solitude. The months passed with little incident, with the exception of a week or so when Myrink was contemplating a coup, or at the very least, an escape via cart, or possibly by foot, into the partially mechanized city. She began rallying workers with lists of equipment we may need, and how any useful skills they possessed could be used to overthrow the guard. Between stealing glances at our superior's maps and eyeballing the Panzerstadt structure whenever the opportunity represented itself, she even began to convince Ahani and me of this plan. This, coincidentally, was a few days before a young gnome was found pocketing a few crystals he had chipped away from the cave walls and had failed to bring to the Chief Ragazi Rospo, Mr. Niskevich. for collection at the end of the day. The gnome's name was Hoyt Runyon, a jovial and somewhat kind fellow that had a budding friendship between Dar and myself. He had run into debt with the Frogman Ragazi when a winning streak in one of their privately owned gambling dens finally ran out, and he found himself far more out of pocket than he expected. We had known he was pocketing a few crystals on the side, and given he was in a similar contract to us, he would be out of this quarry in a few weeks. However, his not-so-deft sleight of hand failed him. When mining chief Niskevich eyed him mid-deed, it wasn't until the following day when the chief called an assembly of all of the workers to the front of the cave. He had a makeshift platform a few feet from the foreground. Niskevich didn't appear distinct from any other imposing frogman I have dealt with recently. Tall and lithe, with bluish indigo skin and powerful forelimbs, resembling a monstrous crossbreed of a frog and snake. The sun beat down on all of these sore and aching workers as he gave us a somewhat platitudinous speech about trust and group work.
It's all about synergy, you see. I'm a team player, and we only hire team players. What we need to wrap our heads around is sometimes we need to shift paradigms, okay? To increase productivity. Okay, this is where the cartwheel meets the road. We've managed the optics on this, and we need more boots on the ground we can trust. Okay, visibility in this quarter has been down. It's been a little fuzzy. Hey, Hoyt, come up here, buddy.
Hoyt was a little confused, but maintained his slightly positive mood, likely believing he was out of labor early. The mine chief then picked up Runyon by the arm and dashed the gnome against the floor of the stage, spraying a dozen onlooking employees in blood. Niskevich then rooted around the mostly pulverized gnome's pocket and showed the entire quarry various stolen, unprocessed Schneef crystals.
Remember, you guys know I have an open door policy when it comes to my team. Okay? We can't go burning the candle at both ends, folks. We are all about value add here at the Panzerstadt Schneef Mines. Okay? Let's right size this, huh?
He then concluded his speech and did his best to positively imprint the idea of trust and group cohesion with us before sending us back to work with a hearty handwave. Needless to say, once again, my rank trashed any plans of escape in the foreseeable future. As I began this passage of my novel, our time here was just about at its end. We all kept our heads down, even Tristophe, for the last week or so. On the day of our departure, the chief was quite formal, surprisingly. He gave us walking papers and our equipment. I once again asked for a bit of direction to Goldinerod. Despite being just east of the kingdom, hearing absolutely no word of it for months was a little peculiar. Chief Niskevich pointed through the wooded area to the west.
You were always a real outside-the-box employee, kid. Not too productive on the ground, but you had bright ideas. Can I ask you why you would go to a place like Goldinerod? They haven't been a real team player in decades.
I was shocked. Niskevich knew about Goldinerod decades ago? Did he know Grunturk? I had to ask.
Oof, a real downsize of that one. Did a number on that Minda's castle you took over back then. Never got to cooperate with them in any significant capacity, but what's done is done.
Gesturing frantically to Ahani to get the notepad out, I began rolling through as many pertinent questions as I could think of.
Wow, sorry. Time is money, and like I said, I hardly knew that maniac. Alright? Get out of here and into Goldenrod. You'll meet plenty of folks who will talk your ear cavities off about that bovine. But I'm really sorry about the timing for, your contract with the boss. Yeesh.
Slightly confused as to why he felt he needed to apologize, I asked him to clarify.
Oh, because the Rajalisar Empire commissioned the destruction of the Mendes Castle like a few days ago?
Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kycell Bakshi along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.